No DQ Galaxy, we are live with a recap of the first NXT Premium Live event of 2023, Vengeance Day. This show took place in Charlotte, North Carolina. Over 5,000 fans in attendance. The first NXT Premium Live event not attached to WrestleMania weekend to take place outside of Florida and the Performance Center. Big night for NXT, trying to get back on the road. They had a good turnout for the show. Pretty hot crowd, not at the level of the classic takeovers, but they were quite hot for most of the show. Let's get right into it. We kicked off NXT Vengeance Day with Dijak, who was part of the classic black and gold era, versus Wes Lee. This was a very entertaining opening match to kick off the show. Felt like an old school black and gold match. You had the classic bigger guy versus the smaller guy. Wes Lee trying to stick and move. You had Lee coming off the apron, but Dijak caught him, gave him a Death Valley driver on the floor. He worked over Lee for a while, delivered some punishment on the outside of the ring. But then Dijak charged Lee and missed, went to the outside of the ring. This gave Lee the opportunity to build up some momentum. And he hit several big moves. He hit a German suplex into a pin, but Dijak kicked out of that. And then Lee gave Dijak a back body drop off the apron to the floor. And then Lee came over the top with a dive, got him back in the ring, hit a poison Rana, and went for another pin, hit the Michinoku driver. Dijak kicked out of that. And then Dijak eventually caught Lee, hit High Justice, but Lee kicked out. Dijak applied a submission. Lee escaped from that. And then Lee avoided another High Justice attempt. He got hit with a big boot. Dijak then went for a top rope power bomb, but Lee countered with a Hurricane Rana. And I'm not sure when exactly it happened. It might have been at this point, but it appeared like Dijak broke his finger. It was nasty. It was like, the only way I can really describe it was when Sid broke his leg, but this was Dijak's finger. His finger was not looking too good. It was tough to look at. And Lee went for another dive to the outside of the ring. Dijak caught him and sent him into the barricade, and then Dijak placed Lee into one of the chairs at ringside, not a folding chair, but a computer chair, you know, one of those more comfy chairs, and used a broomstick to trap Lee in the chair. And Dijak was going to come off the top to the outside, but then Tony D'Angelo and Stax arrived, and I did not even know who the other guy was. I know Tony D'Angelo, but I haven't been really following NXT, and I was wondering, who is this guy again? So anyways, these guys basically took the blow for Lee. I'm not really sure what the storyline is, but they must be feuding. And Lee took advantage of this. Lee hit a super kick followed by a handspring Pele kick. Got the 1-2-3 victory. Yeah, you had the outside interference, but all in all, really good match here. And like I said, felt almost like an old school NXT match. Really solid stuff here. Caleb Jacobs sent in a $5.49 super chat. Thank you for that, Caleb. But since it's about Bron Breakker, I'll save it towards the end of the live stream. And don't worry, it is starred, so I will get to it in due time here. I promise you, Caleb, that it will be read when I get to the main event. Now, moving on here, Hamp Connell sent in a $5 super chat, a little off topic here, but he says, tomorrow in history, 1988, the WrestleMania 3 rematch with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, where Ted DiBiase paid Earl Hebner to be the referee instead of Earl Hebner, or instead of Dave Hebner. Botch. Good stuff. That was, in my opinion, the most memorable wrestling angle of 1988. The screw job with the Hebner twins, Hulk Hogan seeing double. Great stuff there. The only negative of that was Andre the Giant saying that he won the tag team championship, but big moment there when Hulk Hogan finally lost the WWF title after 4 years as champion. And that, of course, set up WrestleMania 4 and the one-night tournament with Randy Savage winning, and the whole Mega Power storyline took off. Moving on here, back to NXT. We had the NXT Tag Team Titles, the Women's Tag Team Titles on the line, I should say. Katana Chance and Kayden Carter against Fallon Henley and Kiana James. They had Briggs and Jensen out there at ringside with them. Cameron Johnson sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Cameron. Appreciate it. Says, was at the venue live and the crowd was hot for most of the night. Yes, they were, and they were chanting, "This is awesome, NXT," the whole 9 yards through several points during the show. Definitely came off well on television. Now, this match was back and forth here for a while. Chance and Carter, the champions, were working well together. A little bit of issues between the challengers, but they did get it together. At one point, Carter hit a cutter to James on the floor, and it looked like she was going to be out of commission. Chance and Carter were double teaming. Chance hit a Hurricane Rana to Henley off the top rope, but Henley was able to kick out. And then James finally recovered and knocked Chance off the apron, or off the top rope, I should say. And then Henley went for a pin. James was on the outside of the ring, and she provided an assist, kind of like what the Usos would do to retain their tag team titles. And in this case, it got the challengers the win. New tag team champions. Chance and Carter dropped the titles here, which makes me think that this will pretty much be the end of them in NXT. They've been in NXT for several years now, and, well, the main roster needs some challengers. Now, if the rumor is true and Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler are going for the tag team titles, then naturally you need some babyface tag teams to challenge them. Seems like a logical choice to call up Chance and Carter to maybe challenge Rousey and Baszler should they win the tag team titles at some point. But of course, you also have the current champions who are heels. So yeah, just makes sense for Chance and Carter to be called up and try to boost up the women's tag team division. I mean, that's the only reason I could see them dropping the titles here. They'll be ending up on the main roster after WrestleMania. Now we move on to Apollo Crews versus Carmelo Hayes in a 2 out of 3 falls match. Really good match here, as you would expect from these two. Trick Williams was out there, and he did a special introduction. Carmelo is now referring to himself as him, which I wonder if some religious people might be offended by that. I don't know. But yeah, he's really full of himself as Carmelo Hayes. And they had several screens with all of his accomplishments shown over the past few years. And they started off slow. They had a bit of a feeling out process in the beginning, and then things started to pick up with the intensity. Hayes slapped Crews. Crews slapped him back. and Hayes tried to come off the top rope, but was caught with a drop kick, and they brawled on the outside of the ring for a little bit. Trick Williams got in Cruz's face and tried to provide a distraction. Did not really work out for him. Cruz hit a moonsault off the apron onto Hayes, and then back in the ring, Hayes slowed the pace down for a while. Cruz started to make a comeback, hit some rolling German suplexes, hit a back body drop. Cruz suplexed Hayes back into the ring from the apron, which is impressive, but we did see Brian Cage do that on Dynamite, so it's not like it's anything out of the ordinary. And Hayes kicked out, and then Hayes finally, I mean, this went on for a while. Hayes finally got the first fall. He tapped out Cruz with the crossface, which, you know, makes sense because it's a 2 out of 3 fall match. And if you're Cruz in storyline in kayfabe, you don't want to be in that hold for too long. So it's better to just tap out and hope to win the next 2 falls. So during the second fall, Hayes tried to get the cheap countout victory, but that was unsuccessful. Cruz made a comeback, hit some big moves, picked up some momentum, but then Williams exposed the turnbuckle, and that backfired. It was Hayes that got sent into the turnbuckle, and then the former Commander Aziz Dabakato showed up to even the odds, but Cruz high-fived him, and that momentarily gave Hayes the opportunity to take advantage, and he did so. He hit the big scissors kick off the top, got the 1-2-3 victory, 2 straight falls in a row, defeating Apollo Cruz. And then after the match, Dabakato, whatever his name is, got in the ring, and he helped up Apollo, only to turn against him and left him laying, got him up in the choke slam, turned it into the sit-down power bomb. And so Apollo Cruz betrayed by his former friend. And this was obviously the right move because Carmelo is moving on up here, and this was a very decisive win for him, building him up for the future. More on that here in a few moments. We had the NXT Tag Team Titles on the line. New Day defending against Pretty Deadly, Gallus, and Chase U for the NXT Tag Team Titles. I guess this is Andrew Chase's hometown or home state. Crowd was really into him. I'm still not into the gimmick. Like, to me, it's basically what's his name from 2003, the university guy. I can't even think of his name. So I mean, this is a 2.0 version of a Chris Nowinski. That's it. Chris Nowinski 2.0. I still don't get the gimmick, but he's got some catchphrases apparently. Keep in mind, I haven't been watching NXT in a while, but the fans in Charlotte were into this guy. He was spelling out his name, and the crowd was chanting along. So, I mean, whatever. I don't get it. And to be fair, I did not get Enzo and Big Cass at first, and they were pretty hot on the main roster until Enzo screwed everything up. So maybe this will work on the main roster. I just don't get it up to this point. And speaking of don't get, Pretty Deadly, I know some people like them, but like they're the Beverly Brothers mixed with the Young Bucks in a way. I guess that could be a good thing, but yeah, I still hate their attire. Not in like I want to see them get their butts kicked. I just think they look like goofballs. Caleb Jacobs sent in a $3 super chat. Thank you for that, Caleb. Says, I really enjoyed the New Day as tag team champions. Well, they had a good month or two run. I guess it was just to elevate those tag team titles a little bit. And in a four-way match, I was thinking there was a good chance here that they would drop the titles just because it's an easy way to do it. They don't have to take the fall. And also, Big E, we're all hoping that he'll be back pretty soon. Maybe he'll be back right after WrestleMania. I mean, he should be, unless there's a setback with his recovery, he should be able to be returning in the next couple of months, and you can have a full-blown New Day reunion. So you had to get those titles off New Day pretty soon. And I would think that it's a good sign here that Kofi and Xavier dropped the titles. By the way, I did want to note that during the kickoff, New Day cut a promo, and Xavier said North Carolina like Justin Roberts, and also said, we bid you adieu, which I believe is Kenny Omega's phrase. So I thought that that was pretty funny. They threw in a couple of little AEW references during the kickoff show. Anyways, match itself was pretty entertaining with the four teams. Pretty Deadly was getting beat up in the beginning by the other three teams, and eventually they took control of the match, and then Kofi tagged in, cleaned house, hit a boom drop onto three people at once. Then you had the breakdown in these types of matches where everybody's in the ring, referees losing control of things. And the fight spilled to the outside of the ring. You had Andrew Chase tossing Kofi all the way to the outside onto everybody. And then Kit Wilson of Pretty Deadly got involved with Chase. And then Chase gave Kit a suplex to the outside of the ring onto everybody. And then the announce table was exposed. Pretty Deadly tried to put it back together. They got booed, but then Gallus re-exposed it and double choke slammed Duke Hudson through the announce table. And by the way, who is the woman that's out there with Chase U? I thought she was pretty annoying. Like, she was yelling the whole time, just screaming. And maybe that's by design. Maybe she's trying to be like Jimmy Hart, screaming out there the whole time. But I found it to be really annoying and not in a good way. Maybe I'm just getting old, because I liked Jimmy Hart's routine back in the day when he would scream in the megaphone. But of course, that's designed to be annoying. But that was my first impression of her. I've never seen her before, and I just thought she was kind of annoying, and not in a good way. So anyways, back in the ring, Gallus double-teamed Xavier Woods. They took out Kofi Kingston. Or actually, Pretty Deadly took out Kofi, but it was Gallus that got the upper hand here. And Gallus picked up the win, double-teaming Xavier. I think I picked Gallus to win this one. And there you go. New Day, no longer the tag team champions. I did think that they were probably the right choice of the teams available in this match to win the titles. Then we had Roxanne Perez versus Gigi Dolan and JC Jane of Toxic Attraction for the tag team titles. And it was a good match, but kind of predictable. It's one of those scenarios, you know, the tag team's going to work together. And of course, they have their dissension and things fall apart, you know, very typical in these types of matches. And I never thought for a minute that Roxanne was losing here. So kind of took me out of the moment. Just, I've seen it before. But, you know, it was still technically a good match. So, yeah, typical stuff here. Toxic Attraction working together. They came out there together. But then JC Jane accidentally hit Dolan, and that started to build up the tensions with them. Dolan was yelling at Jane, and then Perez came in for a dive over the top, and Dolan pulled Jane into Perez. So Jane took the took the blow there. And then Dolan went for a cover on Perez, but Jane broke it up. Then Dolan and Jane started shoving each other, slapping each other. And the big fight broke out with them. But then eventually they got it together. They started working together, and they were back on the same page. They pulled a table from under the ring, set it up, and Perez was able to hit Dolan with the pop rocks, the code red on the floor. And then you had Perez and Jane up on the top rope. Dolan got on the apron. She got knocked off the apron by Perez, crashing through the table. And then Roxanne Perez hit the avalanche pop rocks, code red, whatever you want to call it, from the top rope and got the 1-2-3 victory. So I like the finish. I thought that was well done. And Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, who's next for Roxy? Well, I know that they can always do the Cora Jade match again and rekindle that feud. Again, I really don't know a lot of who's been built up lately in NXT. I know that Nikita Lyons got injured. But yeah, I would think that Cora Jade and Roxanne could have like a final blow-off match at some point, maybe the next premium live event. Honestly, I think Toxic Attraction should just go to the main roster at this point. With Mandy Rose out of the equation, like I think, again, you need to boost the women's tag team division, keep them as a team, and put them on Raw or SmackDown. Now, we had our main event of the evening, Bron Breakker versus Grayson Waller in a steel cage match. You could only win by pinfall or submission. Grayson Waller was wearing the chainmail that Scott Steiner wore back in WCW as a little bit of mind games that he was playing. And as Bron Breakker was coming to the ring, he came up the steps to get inside, but then Waller slammed the door in Bron Breakker's face before the match could even get going, but Bron fought back. Bron smashed Waller's face into the cage, threw him in the ring, and the match officially started. Bron Breakker was dominating the early moments. Bron was running really fast into the ropes and then just wiped out Waller with a Steiner line, a clothesline. And eventually Waller hit a DDT, got the upper hand for a bit. He was mocking Bron Breakker's barking, and Breakker started to make a comeback, but then went for a spear, and he ended up crashing into the cage. He missed. Waller hit a springboard flying elbow. Breakker kicked out of it. Waller tied up Breakker in the ring ropes, started delivering punishment, but then Breakker broke out of it because that's what he does. He breaks out of things. He's Bron Breakker. And Breakker threw Waller into the cage, press slammed him into the cage. Waller did manage to avoid a spear, hit a low blow, which was totally legal in this match. And Waller hit a stunner. Breakker kicked out of that. Waller climbed to the top of the cage, but then Breakker popped back up, went up after Waller, and then gave Waller a big superplex back into the ring. And Breakker hit the spear, pulled the straps down, but did not go for the pin. He started trash talking, yelled at Waller, says he's NXT. Waller was defiant to the very end. Bron Breakker then hit one more spear, 1, 2, 3, retained the championship. And then after the match, we had Bron Breakker up on top of the cage celebrating. Carmelo Hayes showed up and pointed at Bron Breakker. So it looks like we have our main event set up for NXT Stand and Deliver in Los Angeles. at the Staples Center. Caleb Jacobs' super chat from earlier said, all Bron Breakker needs is 91 more days, and he will break Adam Cole's record as the longest NXT champion of all time. I actually do not think that's going to happen. What's interesting here is that I think both of these guys should be on the main roster now. I don't think either of them should be in NXT. But if anybody's going to beat Bron Breakker at this point, I think it has to be Carmelo. And Breakker's ready. I mean, Breakker's been ready, and you could say Carmelo's ready too. But I could see a title change at Stand and Deliver. So I don't know if Bron's going to get that far. Cameron Johnson sent in a $5 super chat, says, a lot of merchandise sold out. Mello, Breakker, Roxanne, and Cora Jade moved a lot of merchandise. Is that a good sign for WWE? Absolutely, and I think it's a good sign for NXT that they're finally out of the pandemic slump and the 2.0 slump. Maybe this is a good sign that they can get back on the road and start drawing bigger crowds. I'm really torn as to who will win at Stand and Deliver, but it definitely looks like that's the direction. The main event was good, but I do feel like the crowd heat did die a little bit for the main event. Not sure why. Not sure if the fans had gotten tired. I still prefer the 5-match NXT cards. I know they do 6, but 5 was like the sweet spot for NXT as far as I'm concerned. Hamp Connell sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Hamp. Appreciate it. Says, tomorrow in history, 2002, Maven wins the hardcore title from Undertaker. WWE really tried with that guy. I totally forgot that Maven even won the hardcore title. But now that you bring it up, I do remember it. Yeah, Maven, for whatever reason, just did not pan out. Never really felt like more than just a guy that got lucky and won something at the right time, and wasn't a case of him actually being at the level of Undertaker or even close to the level of Undertaker. Gomer Kyle with a $2 super chat says, do you feel a Bron Breakker heel turn is coming? Yeah, especially when the crowd is not really reacting a whole lot to him at this point. Like, I think he would make a great heel. I mean, you look at his father and his uncle, Scott Steiner especially was a fantastic heel. So I think that Bron Breakker could pull it off naturally. We'll see what happens. And Carmelo, I think, is going to be the fan favorite in that one. So, yeah, might be a good opportunity for the heel turn and have Carmelo as a babyface. So that was NXT, everyone. And I thank you all for tuning in tonight. Show, I'm giving it a B-. I thought it was a pretty solid show. Pretty Deadly was on it. It was solid. But again, and I say this for every show, it still has not gotten back to the NXT level. This was maybe closer than some of the other shows. I mean, maybe a B. It was pretty solid. I'll go with a B instead of a B-. I mean, this I do think was closer to the old classic NXT, but it still doesn't have that full feeling of the classic NXTs. Like when Wes Lee was out there doing his thing, and even during the men's tag team title match, that's when it felt the closest to the old NXT. And I don't really think we're ever going to get the old classic NXT. But for what it was an entertaining, watchable show. Not necessarily a must-see show, but I certainly did not feel like my time was wasted watching it. So that is my assessment of NXT, and I do think they're moving in the right direction with it. Anyways, guys, thank you again for watching. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your weekend. Stay tuned for the No DQ review. And of course, NoDQ.com will keep you updated with the wrestling news as we get into the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view premium live event, which is coming up in just 2 weeks. We got another one coming up very soon. Take care, everybody. And remember, say yes to NoDQ.com. And I will see you all next time.